one of the things I love about gaming is that everybody has a really weird route in.
Always.
It's always like the maddest thing that somebody did before they came to games. So mine's actually, it's not like a crazy route. So basically I was working as a political journalist, and much as I loved it, it's like hardcore. You know, it's one of those things where it's really long hours and it's very serious, and I have always loved games, and I really wanted to be able to cover games. You know, I just thought, I love what I do. I love being a presenter. I love being a kind of broadcast journalist. I would love to, you know, talk about games in the same way that I talk about politics and have people listen and care about them. And so I asked my editor if I could cover games on the side. And she said it was an infantile hobby and was very confused as to why I would want to. But fortunately did say yes. And so that kind of meant that I was really perfectly placed, right, as things took off and as games became a lot more mainstream than they had been before. It meant that when people just Googled games TV presenter, I was like, hi.
Hello and welcome once again to the In the Lobby podcast with me, Iain. We've got a very special guest. I'm going to reveal her in just a moment's time. But Harrie, why aren't you here? What's going on? Why have we got you remotely?
I'm currently stuck indoors, not wanting to give anyone my bug, so I am doing it remotely this week, which is we've tried to avoid doing for the time being, because we just find that we like to be there in person with the guests, with each other. We just love doing it in person. However, it was very important for me not to spread my germs to anyone this week, especially Iain, who travels everywhere for his job. And I'm sure our guest as well travels absolutely everywhere. So I'm like, I'm not risking getting anyone sick. So this week will be a slight bit different, but we're still going to do our best to get on with it. And then the coming weeks, hopefully everything should be back to normal.
All right, can we get a drum roll for our guest, please? Come on. You just said well-travelled. I'm sure that she's got a lot more to say about everything that you've done in your entire career. Elle Osili-Wood is in the house here on the In the Lobby podcast. Elle, welcome. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. I love that introduction. I liked it. I want a drum roll every time now.
Yeah, that's it from now on. You have got an incredible career behind you and, of course, ahead of you. And you're a bit of an OG when it comes to like the gaming presentation world, right? And tell us about some of your biggest accolades ever. I know you've an award nominated, right? Are you award winning?
Award winning.
Come on, hit me.
Come on, mate.
You've been all over the place, like BBC Radio 3, TV everywhere, all over the world doing what you do. Talk to me about some of your favorite moments in this sector.
Interesting. Okay, so obviously like awards are fun. So I think my favourite one is I was named a BAFTA Breakthrough for a games documentary that I made for the BBC called Special Characters.
Yes.
Please go and watch it. And and that was basically an exploration of video games and how they've shaped culture and how they kind of set the cultural zeitgeist. And so things like you can look at what Lara Croft looks like and it'll be quite telling about where we are in society at any given point, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I was kind of named a BAFTA Breakthrough for that, which was a huge honour. People like Tom Holland and Florence Pugh have been named BAFTA Breakthrough. So basically the same is what I'm saying.
I think that's the same, right, Harrie? That's the same.
Oh, yeah, definitely. That's incredible. Going up against people like that's crazy. Well done.
And I think it was nice as well to be recognised for something in games because, you know, it's also a wider recognition of my other presenting work outside games as well. But they have to, you know, choose one thing that they call your breakthrough project. And that's what they kind of chose for mine. That's what they decided was my breakthrough project. So it was lovely to have games recognised because it's so hard to get it on TV. So it's nice to do it and then be recognised for it. But then I think in games in general, I've done lots of my favourite moments are obviously not awards, but they're just, you know, the best things I've done. So for Ubisoft, they, you know, let me go and pretend to be a Viking in a Viking game show, or I've driven around the UK on a Pokemon bus and like, you know, that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's such a fun job, isn't it?
What I love about gaming is you meet, especially in the presenting world and in my case, like the esports world, you meet people from all different walks of life. And you can never guess anybody's journey or route into this industry, right? I know that you were a journalist, specifically political journalist, which is probably a rarity when it comes to like gaming, and how you found your way into this place. How did you make the jump, and what was it that triggered you to go, you know what, I want to do more gaming stuff?
So I started out as a political journalist for the BBC. And like you said, I think one of the things I love about gaming is that everybody has a really weird route in. It's always like the maddest thing that somebody did before they came to games. So Mine's actually, it's not like a crazy route. So basically I was working as a political journalist, and much as I loved it, it's like hardcore. You know, it's one of those things where it's really long hours and it's very serious, and I have always loved games, and I really wanted to be able to cover games. You know, I just thought, I love what I do. I love being a presenter. I love being a kind of broadcast journalist. I would love to, you know, talk about games in the same way that I talk about politics and have people listen and care about them. And so I asked my editor if I could cover games on the side. And she said it was an infantile hobby, and was very confused as to why I would want to, but fortunately did say yes. And so that kind of meant that I was really perfectly placed right as things took off and as games became a lot more mainstream than they had been before. It meant that when people just Googled games TV presenter, I was like, hi.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So do you remember some of the first games that you covered?
Oh, that's a good question. So the very first piece of games journalism I ever did, which was for my university newspaper, was me doing a big piece on Pro Evo v FIFA.
Yeah.
And I actually came out Team Pro Evo.
Me too. Back in the day, Pro Evo slapped. Pro Evo was better than FIFA.
Wasn't it? And so I wrote this big thing where I was like, FIFA's not far behind.
Yeah.
And once it gets its physics going and it's going to be good. But I was like, by the time I was like, Pro Evo all the way, baby.
Yeah.
Which I always think is, it's so funny now. It feels so different, obviously.
It's so funny that, like, you know, if you can, it's not funny, but like when you have a passion in life, and you try and almost crowbar it into your job. Like back in the day when I used to work as a video journalist for the Press Association, right? And I would go on like the rota and the schedule for like months ahead. Anytime there was a game launch, I know nobody else on the desk was going to be putting themselves forward for it. I was like, I'm doing that. I remember like the Wii U came out. I was like, there's a launch party on Oxford Street. I'm going to that. And like, even though I'd have to be, you know, standing outside of courtrooms in a pair of Primark shoes, freezing my feet off, I'd be thinking, it's fine. I've got the Wii U launch coming next week. And I think having that, when you are passionate about something and knowing that you can somewhat chase it as much as you possibly can, it makes your job so much more fun and fulfilling, right?
It really does. And I know a lot of people kind of burn out in games. I do think sometimes it can be hard to cover something that you love, and then you get home and you're like, oh, now I'm doing it for fun and not work. But I've never truly had that. I think the closest I've come is when I used to stream a lot more.
Yeah.
And then I was too kind of tired to play when I got home. So I kind of wound back streaming a little bit so that I didn't feel like that. But in general, I have like almost every day of my life, I'm like, I can't believe this. I'm so lucky. This is so amazing. Like I will never, ever, ever get over that this is my job and this is what I do. It's just incredible.
Yeah, Harrie, Elle mentioned there about like streaming, because it actually is exhausting, isn't it? And because you're always streaming.
Yeah, it definitely gives you, I found that I started doing it as a hobby as well, when I was in university, because I'd always played games anyway. I was like, let me try streaming. I think it was my sister that suggested it to me. But now I definitely found, like you said, that for me, only certain games really work on stream. And there'll be games that I absolutely love and like playing, but I can't play them on stream because they don't do very well. So in that respect, it kind of like, it stopped being a hobby and stopped being like, oh, let me just play whatever I want, and then started being, okay, now I have to please like the masses. Now I have to try and entertain people. But like you, and probably like Iain as well, every day I'm still like, how do I get to do this as a job? Like it's so lucky, and it just feels like an incredible position to be in.
It really is, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And you know, I'm not going to say whimsical in the world of gaming, but I'm very much like, put me on a stage, I'll hype it up. We're going to have a great time. Put me on a desk, whatever else. But what I love about you and what I want to know more about is like, you must bring that political edge and knowledge into the gaming, circles, right? And you want to scratch the surface a little bit and dig a bit deeper into, I guess, issues inside and outside of what makes gaming tick, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think that for me is always what I think of as my edge, is that number one, I would say, I have kind of an encyclopedic knowledge of games. So I really do my research. I really, play everything and have really, I know my game history. I know if a game comes out, I know what its references are. I know, why it feels the way it feels or looks the way it looks. And then I'm somebody who has always wanted to just really thoroughly cover games. When you watch content about films, for example, it really dives into it, explores the history and the making and the why and how it shapes society. And with games, we always get, did you know games are really big? Did you know everyone plays games now? And it's like, it never dives any deeper. It's always, one of the things that I I did some work with the BBC where I looked at how they cover games and spoke to their editors about how they could better cover games. And one of the things I said was, you don't need to start every piece on games with, well, you might not realise that games are a huge industry now and they're bigger than every other, because it's, you don't do that in film. You don't say, well, Barbie came out last night, and before we get to it, did you know film is a huge industry?
It's almost like an apology at the beginning before getting into it.
And that's what I said. It tells your audience, sorry we're covering this. I know it's, but I promise you actually it's like, no, we're a valid entertainment medium.
Absolutely.
I would say the leading entertainment medium, the forefront of cultural and creative innovation. Like, we deserve to be there. It's very annoying to me that we have to like beg and plead and scrape for our coverage. And so, I've always wanted to just cover games as insightfully and incisively as we cover everything else. Why shouldn't we be taken seriously? Why shouldn't I be able to cover it the same way I cover politics? It's, these days it's more impactful in people's lives, isn't it? People care way more about video games than politics. They shouldn't, but
No, that is a very valid point. I think that's very true. And to me, it's like it's interesting to put it that way, because that's kind of the same way that I've like started to feel about TV. Is like, I grew up watching TV, and I've mentioned this in previous podcasts, and like something me and Iain slightly differ on is like, I don't know anything about TV nowadays. Like, all of my news and things like that I get from like social media, and if I'm watching something, I'm watching YouTube or I'm watching Twitch streams, and that is like become the main source of entertainment for a lot of younger people, I think, as well. So why not bring it to like mainstream media? It doesn't make sense for it to be like still hidden in the back.
I think this is something that I always find really fascinating, because I could do an event to, I don't know, 1 million people, and I could be on the biggest studio that I've ever been on, bigger than Saturday Night TV that all my friends from back up north are watching, and I can come home and I ain't seen my mates in a year or whatever, and they're like, when are you going to be on telly though? And I'm like, well, I don't want to be on telly. Telly's dead.
Yeah.
No, but it's not. But at the same time, like, I don't think people in gaming and esports in particular are eyeing that up anymore. I think, don't get me wrong, if ITV were like, oh, we're going to do a Saturday night gaming show, well, yeah, cool, can't we?
I'll throw my hat in,
yeah, absolutely. But at the same time, like, I don't see that as the future,
No,
like,
but it isn't.
It isn't.
I do tons of work now with television studios and television producers, because what they want is that gaming audience.
Yeah.
And as gamers, we are so engaged and involved in the game community in the way that you aren't with television, right? You don't have the same kind of fandoms in television that you do in gaming, which is where you feel part of it. Like, you might love a show, or you might ship a certain couple or whatever, but it's not the same passion and kind of evangelical behavior that we see in games. And one of the discussions that I've had is, I was talking to a TV director, and he was saying, well, there's no appointment to viewing anymore now. Kids, they don't want to sit down and watch like a specific thing at 9 p.m. on a Saturday. And I was like, well, they do. I was like, they do watch. They'll tune in to watch their favourite streamer when they're on. They'll watch, say they're in the UK, they'll watch an American like studio doing a showcase at 2 a.m. in the morning. I was like, so it's just that you don't have anything of value to offer. Yeah. And I think that's the problem, is actually there's nothing, when we cover games on TV, even, a show I used to host, one of the big arguments I had, and one of the reasons I ended up leaving, was because we were just showing like esports matches that had already been on.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, if you follow them,
Yeah.
like the teams I love and the esports I love, I follow, I know immediately, even if I'm not watching, let's say, but then I'll check in the same way you check in on a football match that you care about.
Yeah.
So I was like, why are we doing this? Like, we're not adding any value. It's, so I think that's part of the problem with TV is it just, it's particularly with, the younger generation, because they grew up in this immersive world where like it's their oyster and it's theirs for the taking, and they can shape it. They're in Roblox or in Minecraft, they're like building their own worlds. Why would I sit down in front of a TV and have someone talk at me for an hour? Like, it doesn't have the same offer.
That being said, go on, Harrie, you go.
I was going to like segue onto one of the things that you're working on currently. But I mean, Iain, you can go ahead and say whatever you're saying first, because I feel like I'd love to hear a bit more about you working on the sound of gaming for BBC Three. But Iain, go ahead first. So
I want to know about this as well.
Onto that afterwards.
We need to talk about BBC Radio 3, but I also want to talk about like what we were just saying there about viewership being. I was actually thinking about it consciously, about the scattered viewership of everything now. I grew up in an era where like everything was appointment viewing, you know, like if it's Friday night, you know that you're watching something that millions of other people are all sat watching. Whereas now I think people in esports, outside of gaming, you know, in any industry, are just like finding themselves in pockets of their own little community of viewers, right? And that's a big part of Twitch. But I just had this hunger last week where I wanted to feel connected to the world again. So I wanted to watch a bit of terrestrial telly, and you know, sometimes I'll pop on a bit of Great British Bake Off or whatever, just to have that, you know, that old school feeling of being part of this mass group of people all watching the same thing, which I think in 10, 20, 30 years will never exist again.
I know, it is really sad because I love appointment viewing, right?
Yeah.
I think sometimes what it is that I miss, though, is just the community, because I think you're right that we're increasingly fractured, but right now we're also increasingly fractured across social media. So it used to be,
it's crazy.
You know, we all sat on Twitter, didn't we?
Yeah.
And you watched something and everyone was tweeting and you were like, oh my God, why are they doing that or whatever, for whatever you were watching. And now it's that actually everyone's left Twitter and people aren't really on Instagram anymore. And so actually it's also that there's no communal place to go and feel. Like I used to think of Twitter as my like hive of mind, you know, like you would dive in and you'd be like, we're all here, we're all sat together, little nerds on our phones, like, you know, and that's gone now. And so when you watch something, it's like I was watching Love is Blind, please don't judge me. And and I was so mad at it, right? I was mad at everyone in it because it's awful. And the first thing I did was like go to Twitter and be like, Love is Blind, just to see what everyone was saying, because I just wanted to feel like I was part of a community watching it. Like,
community is the word, isn't it? And I think, sorry, Harrie, I want to come back. I'm going to rant here a little bit.
No, it's fine. I fully agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, Twitter in particular, X or whatever you want to call it, Twix, I don't know. You know, if you go there, and I was saying this to my dad, like my dad might have some like old school views that I'm always trying to just get out of him, squeeze out of him. And I keep explaining to him that if you go on Twitter looking for that view, you're going to find it. So like, and what Twitter then does for you, it just provides this narrative of people with similar opinions, similar news feeds, whatever that you're looking for. And that can just dominate your life. You know, like, for example, my Twitter is wrestling and video games. Yeah. And if I only went on Twitter every day, that's what I think the world was. Yeah. Just wrestling and gaming. Yeah. But you know, that's why I think it's important sometimes to just watch a bit of telly, make sure you know what's happening in the news, read a newspaper, expand your mind. That's all I'm saying.
It was a good rant. I liked it.
Okay, thank you. Harrie, go on. Let's talk about BBC Radio 3.
I feel like I'm actually going to have to get back into reading the newspaper. Sometimes I play like daily games on my stream, and most of them, like, I feel like you have to keep up with current world events, and I'm like, I should just read a newspaper or like find somewhere to get my current daily world events, because I don't know most of them. But yeah, going back to, I guess, the topic of TV and gaming and kind of like the merging of them both. So you present a show called, is it a show or is it a listening? Is it like a podcast? The BBC Radio 3 Sound of Gaming? Yeah, so it's a show. So it goes out on the radio, and then, but also obviously you can get it on BBC Sounds or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, you do. Yeah. Do you change your voice for the radio or not? Or are you still you?
It's different than me in just casual conversation, just because it's, you know, you need your good diction, you need to be a little bit slower. Like, I'm a very fast talker, so for radio I kind of have to bring it down a little bit.
Go a bit smoother.
Yeah, a little bit smoother for radio.
Oh, there it is. There it is. I want this answer in full radio voice now. Okay.
But yeah, so Sound of Gaming. So it basically covers gaming soundtracks.
Yeah, so it's a look at gaming music, basically. So it's basically we each show chats to one composer. So that could be a game that's just come out. So, for example, in my first show, we did Iain Chambers from Starfield, who is just amazing. Yeah, I love him. Or it might be, you know, if we're doing, say, cozy games, maybe we'd, you know, get a specific composer from that, whether or not it was a new game. And so each show's themed, and I kind of take you on a journey through video games. And it's designed for people who, as much of my work is, whether you play games or you don't. And so I kind of really explain what each game is, and I try and help you understand what it feels like to play it, so that when we play the track, you're kind of visualizing what that world is like and what it's like to be inside that game. Because that's, I think, always what I want to do with my work, is not just tell you what a game is, but help you understand the feeling of it.
I think that's vital, because, like, you know, sometimes if you catch a song that you heard from a video game, whether it was 10 years ago, 10 minutes ago, 10 months ago, it gives you that feeling of the game. And soundtracks are so vital to the success of a good video game, right? I mean, Harrie, I'm sure you agree, some of your favourite games ever, you could probably recite some of the music from it right now.
I was just trying to think, actually. I'm trying to think what my favourite game soundtrack would be. And I know there's like songs in certain games that like obviously songs that aren't necessarily created for the game itself, but like tie in really well to it. Detroit Become Human, I know has like a song that's one of my favorite piano pieces. I think it's by a French composer, I'm not too sure, but just fits the game really, really well. And I think you're right, like the importance of a really good soundtrack or a really good crafted piece of music can like add so much to a game. And a lot of people say like FIFA or something like that. I think we had this question previously on a podcast, didn't we, of like, we asked Tien what his favorite FIFA soundtrack was, and he just like knew straight away which game that he was going to say. It was unbelievable.
The year and everything, which is hard considering FIFA has just been looping, well, before it became the AFC, for like forever. So that was good going from Tien. But you've obviously got a great voice for the radio and for any broadcast, right? But apparently you've lent it to video games as well, right? So you've lived the dream. I think we all grow up thinking, I'd love to voice a video game character. But you've done it, what, 3 times?
7.
7 times?
Oh my God.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Which games?
Okay, right. Let me see if I can get there.
Have you got them on deck?
I've got
Paradise Killer's one of them. I know
Paradise Killer, yes. Yes, Your Grace. Pirates, Viking and Knights 2. Second Son. Pandora Chains of Chaos, did I already say that?
No, you haven't said that.
Obstruct. What was my first one? This is awful. I can't remember its name because it was like a tiny...
Do you know what, right? I would give anything...
That's impressive.
...to do one voice for one video game. And Elle's got that many, she's forgot one of them. That is next level. That's next level. That must be amazing, though.
It's amazing.
I can't think of what kind of character you would voice, Iain. What do you picture yourself as in a video game?
I can mix it up. I could if Arnold Schwarzenegger couldn't voice over, I could do him. You know, if there was like a Terminator game and he wasn't available, I could do that.
And that is what I thought when I arrived here today and I heard your voice. I just was like, is that Schwarzenegger?
No, that's cool. So how does that come about? Is that through agent? Is it through recommendations? How does...
Kind of a mix of all of it. So I've always done voice work, like voiceovers and voice acting since I was quite young.
Yeah.
And in fact, actually, the kind of very first ever paid media job I did was I was 7 and I did a voiceover for something. So
wow.
it was, it's something that I've done for a very long time. And then, I think so the first one I was offered was just, I think they'd seen me hosting and they said, would you like to come and do it? And then it's kind of been a mixture of, so for example, I did, I have a game coming out called Mythwrecked, which is coming out next year. And I'm really excited about it. It's like exactly my type of game as well.
Come on, talk to us. What is it?
So it's a mystery. They call it a friend 'em up, and it's a mystery game where you wake up, and I'm the lead character, Alex, and she wakes up on an island. Her memory's gone, and the island's filled with Greek gods, and she has to go and help them sort out their problems, figure out what the mystery is, so that she can leave. And so I play the lead in that, Alex, and that came about because the year I was a BAFTA Breakthrough, the designer of the game, he was also a BAFTA Breakthrough, and so we met, and he was like, "Oh, I'd love you to come and do this voice." So it's kind of a bit of a mix because the games industry is really small.
Yeah.
And so either I know somebody or they've heard me somewhere, and so I get offered bits and pieces. But I have auditioned. I auditioned for Pirates, Vikings, and Knights as well.
Nice.
And then nailed it.
Of course, yeah. When the red light's on, you did it.
That's incredible. I've got to know through streaming. I've got to know so many other streamers that do voice acting for games. Like I befriended a girl recently who voiced a character in Requiem. Oh my God, the name of the game escapes my mind now. It's the one about like a little boy that's in control of like a horde of rats and he has to use them.
Oh yes,
what's that game called? Oh my God, it's blanking my mind. But when you were talking about that previous game, Iain, it reminded me of our survival mode question.
Oh yeah.
So I feel like we should segue into finding out what last game you played. All right, I'll let Iain explain this one because it might be a little bit difficult over Discord. You explain the segment, Iain.
All right, cool. So you got to think of the last video game you played, and then you've got to imagine yourself waking up right there, in and amongst it, in that environment, and then you've got to tell us how you'd survive.
Okay, can I cheat slightly?
Yes.
Because the last thing I played was COD, and I feel like that's boring, because what would happen is I would get shot in the head. And it would be over immediately.
Yeah. Oh, you could hide somewhere,
Yeah, I could, camp out, but I know definitely immediate headshot. Yeah, I can feel that's how that would go. So I'm going to go one game before, which is a game I'm actually still currently playing.
Yeah.
And it's called Chants of Sanaa. I don't know if that's exactly how you say it, but Chants of Sanaa. It's a little indie game, and I'm just in love with it. So it's, if you know the story of the Tower of Babel, I think the story is that, basically.
Okay.
So, because it starts off with like a mysterious tower, and there's all these fractured groups around it, different kind of tribes, towns, and they all speak a different language, and obviously you don't speak them, and it comes up in different glyphs.
Yeah.
And so you're trying to solve the mystery of what happened, as well as translating their languages. And so it's a bit like something like Return of the Obra Dinn or Case of the Golden Idol, in that you have to use context of what's around you to figure out, oh, okay, this glyph means this, or when they're saying this, they mean this, and then you translate them, and it helps you translate the languages.
Okay.
And yeah, I just think it's just the best game. It's full of like puzzles and little stealth things and that kind of thing.
This sounds like a nice place to be.
Yeah, I just, it just so happens that that's the thing. No, genuinely, I'm right in the middle of it. I literally, played it yesterday on a flight home from Chicago and like fell in love with it. So it's, but I will say, I wouldn't speak the language. So that adds a little bit of, difficulty. So so it does seem quite nice. I think it's like a kind of oasis type desert city, or the whole space is like that. So I think number one, I'd get a little bit of a tan on first before I decided to interact with anybody. I want to look my best because it's sunny. So I think that's what I do, is maybe just chill for a little bit. Maybe have a dip. There's some nice there's some nice water graphics.
This is not the concept of our game, survival mode, but I'm here for it. All right.
I love this. I'm not
saying like, how do you survive? Oh, I put on some factor 30. Like, that's not how this goes down. But yeah, go on, continue.
We're very different people. So that's what I do first, and then I guess I'd have to go and like gesture. And I think, as people will probably be able to see, I'm a big hands person. So I'm hoping that would help, because I'm obviously not going to speak any of these languages. And so I'm hoping that a very nice smile and some like friendly open, I'm not here to hurt you.
No one's going to kill you then.
I'm hoping no headshots in this one.
And you've got a tan at this point, of course.
What do you say? And I've got a tan, do you know what I mean? So they're like, wow, gorgeous, glowing. Who is she? So I'm hoping maybe I'd be like, the mysterious stranger in town.
And then you could just live there.
And then I could just live there, and also, I get the sense there's a vacancy for a god in that town. I feel like the story. so I feel like little bit of a canny behaviour. I could maybe work my way up to top of that tower to god level. I just saying, I think
leading the place.
What do you think of that, Harrie?
Do you know what? I was just looking up the game as you were talking about it. Chants of Sanaa. Is it like a puzzle game?
Yeah, basically.
I want to play this.
I love puzzle games. They are my absolute favourite.
It's a really good,
I'm going to check this out.
Yeah, do.
Yes.
I think it would be good to stream, because you can definitely get people to... So, for example, I was playing it on the plane, right, like I said, when I was coming home.
Yeah.
And I had to stop because I knew it was going to be really good to play with my husband. I was like, it's that thing where like you can both be like, no, I think it means this. Or no, I think it means this. And then it's like there are just general puzzles in it as well to solve. And so I knew it was going to be really fun to play together. And I reckon it would be great on a stream, because you can get everybody chipping in, like trying to figure stuff out. So yeah, it's a good one. I'll tune in.
I've been playing so many puzzle games recently, so I'm going to add this. I'll add this one to the wish list for sure. It looks very good. But yeah, okay, that's great then. So no immediate threat of danger or anything when you wake up in this world. Going to get a tan and work your way up to god status. I love that. That is great.
Elle, I feel like we could talk to you for forever, because I'm genuinely sitting here like a little bit mind blown about the sheer versatility of your career. Like, it's super cool. And I feel like if we sat here and talked about all your accolades and all your achievements and all the different bits, I want to know why you're in Chicago and whatever else, but let's just run it back a little bit to the very beginning. I'm not talking about, your political journalist career. I'm talking about the first ever video game you got your hands on. Do you remember it?
So no is the very boring answer that I always give to this question, because I think of it very similar as like, what's the first song you ever heard, or what's the first TV show you ever played? Like when I first played games, I loved them and I was like, yes, great, more of this. But it wasn't like I, was like, I kind of just thought, oh, this is another entertainment medium, great, and it's the best one, So what I do say is that it was probably Sonic or Abe's Odyssey, just thinking about the family members that introduced me. So I'm reasonably certain it would have been one of those. But I always think the first game that made me think, oh my God, games, was Silent Hill.
Okay,
So I played it with, I grew up in a family.
That's a weird one, because it's a weird petrifying.
One, right? Yeah. And it's literally, I was way too young to play it as well. But I was really lucky, and I grew up, everybody played games, right? I've got a big family, 4 siblings, I've got like 50 cousins, which is hardly an exaggeration. And and so I had all big groups of cousins, and I played like different games with each set. And this specific set of cousins, they were all on my black side of my family. And I played specifically like Japanese horror games and fighting games with them, which is very cliched because those are the games that we black people love. And we also very clichédly played through it. So like I'd be walking down one of the endless corridors, and they'd be like, don't get down it.
So they're not got your back. They're making it worse.
Not got my back at all. But it meant that I felt quite safe when I was playing it. But I think it was the first time, because you know when you play Sonic, it's like, it's great and it's fun, but it's not immersive. I don't think I'm Sonic when I'm in it. But Silent Hill was the first thing that I played where I was like, had to keep saying to myself, you're in London, you're in a room with your cousins, you are not in this creepy town, you don't have a lost daughter.
It sucks. It sucks you in.
I was really like, you know, I kept being like, okay, it's all right, everything's fine. And so that was the first time that I was like, oh my God, you feel like you're inside games. This is life-changing. So that's the one that I think of as the first game that just blew me away and made me think, this is
it. And it's weird because I actually do remember the first ever time.
Really?
Yeah, because like I was desperate to get I think I've told this story on the podcast, so I'll fast forward it. But like, you know, I was asking for a games console forever. My mum and dad were like, nope, no gaming in this house. Yeah. And then one day my mum surprised me with an N64, and it was like the gold controller, 007 GoldenEye version.
Oh, nice.
And she got me Zelda and GoldenEye came with the console, right? Yeah. But I straight away, it was Christmas morning, I put GoldenEye in, and my late granddad walked into the room after me playing it for 5 minutes and saw me shooting people, just turned it off and took the game.
Oh, no.
But those 5 minutes were the greatest 5 minutes of my life.
Yeah.
And that says a lot, because I've had some good 5 minutes in my time. But that's that one's up there. Harrie, do you remember like the first time you?
Do you know what? I don't remember. I don't know what my first game was. It's again one of those things. Like, my dad has played games all of his life, and I have videos of me like playing on his computer, and it was like a huge monitor, and the back of it was just like humongous, and I was playing like Elmo games and stuff on the computer, like educational games and things like that. But before long, I was like playing like custom server Call of Duty, where me and my sister would just like play house on Call of Duty. We'd like drive around in Jeeps and stuff, and we didn't want to play with anyone else. We just wanted to like play house. But so I don't remember what my first game is. Very similarly to you, but I probably played a good few games before I really have that first connected memory of like, oh, what my first video game was. Yeah. But I guess building on that, now that you've played a lot of games, what would you say is... It's always hard to ask someone their favorite game, because for me, when someone asks me my favorite, I'm like, is it my favorite or is it just very nostalgic for me? Like, it's two things I go between. But what would you say is your favorite game, if not your most nostalgic or the one that you hold the dearest memories with?
So for this, I think I always say I have a pantheon, right?
Okay, I like that.
Stuff
That's what
comes in and comes out of the pantheon.
Like when you look at your favourite album, it's the same sort of thing,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, it's too hard for me to just say. And it's also because, you know, it's kind of like you were saying, Harrie, when you think of favourite, like, what do you mean by that? Like, is it the game I've played the most? Is it, if I had to play it just for the rest of my life, the game I would play? Is it, you know, that kind of thing? So I think there's a couple of things in there. So first off is COD as a franchise. Like, I always think that is kind of physically my favourite game to play. You know, like, I get such a kind of physical satisfaction from it. I'm a big FPS player. I love, like, for me, that's like gaming. You know,
do you remember when Modern Warfare 1 really popped off, but then I feel like everyone was playing Modern Warfare 2.
Yes, exactly.
Do you remember? That was like one of my favourite eras ever.
Yeah.
Like, all my mates had it. It was like...
the best.
We say about appointment viewing, it was appointment gaming.
Yeah, and it was. And that's what I think is... And in fact, actually, as you said, Harrie, that's nostalgia as well. I wonder if... I mean, I think I would still love it if it just came out today, but, it's such a special game for me. It's like the game that I loved. And like I mentioned before, I was really lucky that everyone around me gamed when I was younger. And I think one of the things that can be hard for women today is you get to a certain age. Like, I think all women play games when they're younger, right? And then they get to a certain age and society starts being like, you're not welcome here, this isn't for you. Whereas I didn't grow up like that at all. all the guys in my life, all my guy friends at school, like play games, love that I play games.
Sick.
We had like Street Fighter tournaments at school and stuff. So I just have the happiest memories of COD. Because it was funny, because recently I was saying, sometimes I think it's a little bit more toxic now. And everyone was like, didn't you used to play back when?
Yeah.
But I don't remember it as toxic, because actually I just had the best time. I was just having so much fun with my friends. I loved it. So for me, like COD is always in there, will always be in there. I'm just like a die-hard like fangirl for COD. I also think that Castlevania Symphony of the Night, which I played like a long time after it came out, but it's just brilliant. It's just, and it's so influential. Something I love is that in, my career, I've interviewed lots and lots of game designers and directors, and I always love to ask them, like, what are your influences? What games do you love? What do you see now in your own work? And almost every single one of them will say Castlevania Symphony of the Night, which I find really interesting, because it's obviously hugely famous within gaming, do you know what I mean? But it's not like COD, is it? That people know, everybody knows it. It's
a bit more niche.
It's a bit more niche, even though, I know it's a huge game and it's hugely successful.
But it's not like, every Tom, Dick and Harry knows exactly what it is. Yeah.
But it's so influential. And you can just tell it felt, even when I played it and came to it later, it still felt innovative. It still felt exciting. It felt like they were doing so much with so little, which I always think is brilliant. Metal Gear's in there because I'm just a huge Kojima fan. Again, an embarrassing fangirl.
Too slow for me, that game. It's too slow.
I mean, I will say I don't like stealth and I am a fast-paced player, but there's something about it that it keeps me engaged, because I do sometimes get really bored by stealth and I'm like, why am I hiding behind this bush for 7 hours? But
it's a prime example of wonderful sound design, isn't it?
I mean, incredible.
Incredible.
Yeah, and the detail as well. I love, because I put a lot of my favourite soundtracks into my first sound of gaming, and so I put Metal Gear in, I put MGS5, and I went and researched what Kojima had wanted for the sound and all that kind of stuff. And he's so meticulous. He's so detailed. He's got such clarity of vision. Yeah. So it's really interesting to go and read, and what he wants is so different. He was like, no melody, no. And it's so, and I was like, that's
it
just
Kojima.
Cold, and that's what he wanted. He wanted it to be harsh and realistic, and to make you, think about where you were in the world rather than just being like, so
like me playing Kirby's Wonderland or whatever I'm playing right now on the Nintendo Switch. No worries, guys, everything's happy. Exactly. Listen, we normally have this as a 40-minute podcast, but I'm making the executive decision that we keep rolling. Harrie, any questions?
Hello. Well, I guess you spoke a little bit about your experience, being a woman in gaming, and how you think that now it's a little bit more toxic, but it was funny to hear you say that people told you, oh, but you were playing games back in the day. How do you think that things have changed over the years? Do you think things have changed for the better? How do you feel as a woman in gaming? Obviously, you've made some absolutely substantial, incredible impact in the world of gaming as well. And how does that make you feel?
I mean, proud, I think. I just think I'm part of a kind of generation of really amazing women in gaming. I think I look around and I think so much of my career is due to the women that have been around me in gaming. So I look at people like Jules Hardy or Jerica Weber or Alicia Judge or Charlie Hodgson. They're people that were, I consider in my kind of generation, and who have done really incredible work to progress what gaming looks like to the world and what women in gaming look like to the world. And then, of course, inside, the games industry itself, we just have, fantastic, incredible women. In particular, I think of somebody like Amy Hennig, who's, this fantastic director and is so visionary and just the kindest person. I interviewed her and I was like, oh, I want to make games. And she was like, here's my number, call me whenever you need, and that's what I have always loved about women in games, is that they're so supportive of each other. And I try to say to people, it is a hard industry and it is more toxic than it used to be. But the industry itself is so welcoming, and actually that toxicity is coming from outside it, and you should never be afraid to come and be a woman in games, because it's actually the most incredible, supportive, wonderful place. I am so happy when I walk into an event and there are other women there, because I know they're just going to be the best people. And so for me, the sad thing is that actually the industry has gotten so much better. We've got no more toppling over forward Lara Croft. We've got, the industry itself has realistic women, great female characters, women working in the highest echelons of the industry. But gamers themselves have gotten worse. And it's a very significant minority. I always say to people, it's far fewer people than you think. They're just very loud. But it's, they're sending people death threats, they're sending people rape threats. I didn't grow up with that. I didn't grow up playing through that or having to listen to that. And that's what makes me scared for this generation of women is like, if you want to go and play COD today, like I did when I was growing up, you've got to put up with awful stuff. And it just breaks my heart, because I think, well, why would you? Why am I going to spend my free time having people tell me to kill myself? It's difficult.
Yeah. So it's like you've had a version of events growing up that was a lot more positive. Yeah. So it's knowing that there's got to be a way for that to exist, but also being aware of some of the issues that are obviously prominent right now, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And it's just difficult. It's, for me, the way forwards is studios taking a really strong stance on this stuff. So it's, I love, for example, like that EA Sports FC.
It's hard to say, isn't it?
I don't love it. It's better than eFootball.
Bring back Pro Evo, that's all I'm saying.
Exactly, yeah. But it's, them having women in Ultimate Team, right? Just little things like that. So
cool.
Just makes such a big difference, because they put female players in, no one used them. Yeah. And it's so frustrating. I'm like, do you know Sam Kerr is in that game? Like, what's wrong with you? So it's, I think stuff like that. And then just being forthright on it as well. Being like, we don't care, cry. Like, whinge about it. We're not bothered. I think that's the way forwards, is to teach them that actually the people who make your games hate you when you're behaving like that. Like,
for sure.
You don't speak for them. You don't speak for our community. They're not interested in your like crybaby identity politics stuff that you're so whinging about. No one cares. It's not real. It's a thing you make up because you just don't have enough in your life. And I love when the studios are just like, boo-hoo,
Yeah.
That's my favourite.
Yeah. If there's somebody watching or listening to this right now, young woman, thinking, you know what, I'd love to somehow follow in your footsteps, because this is the hard thing that I find when people, I had a call the other day, somebody just DM'd me on Instagram who's seen me doing some work, and they're like, how do I do that? And I'm like, I don't really know. Like, I didn't really think I'd be doing this at this point. I didn't know. There was no like laid out map for me back then, and I don't really think in gaming or presentation nowadays there actually is like a formulaic way like there was maybe in the 80s, 90s and 2000s, where you go do your broadcast journalism or whatever it is, and you get your local TV miles under your belt and go from there. But what would your advice be now to somebody who's maybe like, I don't know, 10, 11, watching you going, how do I get there?
So I think I always say to people, first of all, make content, right? So if you want to be a presenter, you can present at home. You've got a phone, you can film yourself, like make stuff, put it online, make a YouTube channel. I had a YouTube channel, right? Because I wanted to make a certain type of content and I wasn't getting commissioned to make that. I was having to do much more like boring mainstream stuff or very hyper specific game stuff, and I wanted to do more creative things. So I made a YouTube channel. A bunch of people found me through it. I got so much work through it. It was something that was life-changing for me. So put your stuff online. Like, there's no point being amazing in your bedroom if nobody can see you. Yeah. Stream, make a YouTube channel. Like, all these things, there's so many places. Go start a TikTok. There's so many places for you to showcase yourself, and there are people who are looking, right? Everybody's desperate for what gaming offers and the engagement that gaming creators have. They'll find you. But then also, be really loud, right? I'm mega loud. I have so much work because I just email people. I literally will just email someone and be like, you should hire me. I'm great. Like, and if you are, and you work hard and you practice, then, they'll have a look and they'll be like, okay. And maybe they say no, but maybe they remember you. And then next time they've got work, they think of you. It's being proactive. It's being brave. It's putting yourself out there politely, carefully, thoughtfully. Yeah. But being loud.
I'm going to challenge you. Yeah. I'm going to play devil's advocate here, just for a moment. So my brother's a teacher, a bit older than me. He's seen different generations of students coming up that all have different ambitions, dreams and goals when they're really young. And I think what he tells me is like 10 years ago, a lot of the time it'd be like, oh, I want to be a footballer, or I want to be a doctor, or I want to be a teacher or whatever. Whereas now, I think because gaming is so prominent and the world of social media and YouTube is so prominent, he says it's like 98% of the classroom that all go, I want to be a YouTuber, I want to be a presenter, that's what I want to do. And I think that because it's so accessible on social media, everybody thinks it's so achievable to get to the higher end. And I feel like because everybody's doing it, everybody's YouTubing, not everybody, but I guess it's like pushing it beyond just doing it. It's like finding your niche purpose and voice, I guess, and figuring out that side of things too, isn't it? Yeah, I think so. At the end of the day, 1% of people are going to be successful. And that's always the thing I say to people, particularly when I mentor in this industry. I'm like, very few people make a full-time living doing what we do. I'm incredibly lucky. I think about that all the time. Most people come in, they drop out. Even the games industry itself, the average retention rate is 5 years. Yeah. So people really don't stay in this industry. But I do think that
do try and find your niche, do try and find something you love, do try and find something that you can be genuinely passionate about. And if I gave you, 5 minutes to talk about it on camera with no script and no notes, could you do it? The thing that you can do that about is your niche. Yep. But I also think there's no harm in trying, not just because, of course, there's no harm in trying, but because presenting is a really valuable skill to have. Communication, being able to verbalize your thoughts articulately, being able to stand up for yourself, being able to have a voice in a room. So I think, of course, not everybody who tries to be a presenter will do it. Of course, not everybody who wants to be a massive YouTuber will do it. But I think the skills that it gives you are really valuable in life. And I think right now, being able to have a voice and being able to speak up is so important that, I'd love to see more people do it.
There's your answer.
Amazing answer. That was honestly very inspirational. I feel like I'm going to go away thinking about that one. Yeah, you speak so incredibly well, and we've talked about this on podcasts before. But get out, Ian, not you. Yeah, I always tell Ian that like presenting is something that's I stream all the time, and through like being with Guild, I've grown with so much confidence, and now I do try my hand here and there at presenting things every now and then, or at least, pre-recorded things. But we did this last week with Ian and Adam Savage. So I'm going to give you guys a little question. And basically, it's very quick fire questions, very easy. I'm going to give you 5 seconds each to give me an answer. So for example, I'm not going to give you much time to think about it. And then I'm going to start counting down 5. We'll start with Elle. Start with Elle.
Okay. All right.
Elle. Name me 3 things that are blue.
The sky, ugly Nissan, the sea.
You've had an ugly Nissan that's blue, right?
Just seen one. Just one parked nearby me that I think about a lot.
Oh my God. I was not expecting that middle one, I swear. Ian, in that case, name me 3 things that you climb.
Okay. Fence, wall, the ladder of life.
Nice. All answers in 4 seconds again.
That was good.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm trying to think where to go with these next ones. Okay.
Blue Nissan's it was really
Yeah, that was so good. Yeah. So Elle, name me 3 things that you can drive.
Your career, a car, and I don't know, a boat?
A boat, yeah. I drove a boat the other day, actually.
Yeah,
true story.
right.
I thought you sailed it, but if it's like a speedboat, then you drive it.
It's driving it, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, great.
I love that you said your career. Do you know what? I had a feeling that you were going to say something like that.
Ambitious woman.
It's the first one that when I think drive, I'm like, me and my career.
Yeah. Book me now, get that as well.
Exactly. Available now.
Okay. Last one for you, Ian, then I guess. And
Let's
then
go.
we can wrap things up. Name 3 things that you can pop.
Balloon, spot, and cherry. What? No, I don't mean that. No, I actually didn't mean that. I actually meant a cherry as in like a cherry. Should we end there?
Okay, we can have Ian stumbling over his words at the end.
Who wins?
You almost stumbled on the
Birth.
Yeah, I think the thing that you can pop, you kind of stuttered on that one a little bit, but that's okay. That's fine.
Did anybody else think cherry, or was it just?
Wins.
Okay.
No, I can't say that's what came to mind.
Okay, fine.
I was thinking that's the thing I hope you didn't say, but that's fine.
Oh man,
Okay,
I ran out of stuff. But anyway, before we wrap this up, Elle, I just want to, as you're able to say, listen, check me out, book me, whatever else. For anybody who just wants to watch your amazing work, listen to your amazing work, where can they find you? Where can they do it?
Oh, interesting. So if you want to listen to Sounds of Gaming, it's on BBC Sounds, or as I said before, anywhere that your podcasts are available, you can listen to that.
Yeah.
And then my work's kind of all over. If you can go to my website, which is just elleosili-wood.com, and you can find more about what I do there, but also just give me a Google. I've got a very recognisable name. It's very helpful.
Yeah, it is. Well,
Awesome.
I'm now a big fan, and it was really cool to talk to you. So congratulations on all of your achievements so far. I'm looking forward to potentially hearing your voice on video games I don't even know you're on, because there's definitely one out there that you've forgotten about.
I know.
And I'm going to find it.
Okay, I like it.
But yeah, congrats on everything. Thank you so much for joining us in the lobby.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It was fun.
Good. Thanks for coming in remotely, Harrie.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I wish I could be there. Yeah, great podcast. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us. And I guess we'll see everyone else next week.
Bye.
Bye.